Let's talk about energy and climate control. Every president since Nixon has said what both of you have said. Climate change, yes. Has said what both of you have said, and that is we must reduce our dependence on foreign oil. When Nixon said it, we imported from 17 to 34% of our foreign oil. Now we're importing more than 60%. Would each of you give us a number, a specific number of how much you believe reduce our foreign oil imports during your first term? And I believe the first question goes to you, Senator McCain.
I believe we can, for all intents and purposes, eliminate our dependence on Middle Eastern oil and Venezuelan oil. Canadian oil is fine. By the way, when Senator Obama said he would unilaterally renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Canadians said, yeah, and we'll sell our oil to China. You don't tell countries you're going to unilaterally renegotiate agreements with them. We can eliminate our dependence on foreign oil by building 45 new nuclear power plants right away. We can store and we can reprocess. Senator Obama will tell you, as the extreme environmentalists do, it has to be safe. Look, we've sailed Navy ships around the world for 60 years with nuclear power plants on them. We can store and reprocess the spent nuclear fuel, Senator Obama, no problem. So the point is, with nuclear power, with wind, tide, solar, natural gas, with development of flex fuel, hybrid, clean coal technology. Clean coal technology is a key in the heartland of America that's hurting rather badly. Right. So I think we can easily, within 7, 8, 10 years, if we put our minds to it, we can eliminate our dependence on the places in the world that harm our national security if we don't achieve our independence from it.
All right. Can we reduce our dependence on foreign oil, and by how much in the first term, in 4 years?
I think that in 10 years, we can reduce our dependence so that we no longer have to import oil from the Middle East or Venezuela. I think that's about a realistic time frame. And this is the most important issue that our future economy is going to face. Obviously, we've got an immediate crisis right now, but nothing's more important than us no longer borrowing $700 billion or more from China and sending it to Saudi Arabia. It's mortgaging our children's future. Now, from the start of this campaign, I've identified this as one of my top priorities, and here's what I think we have to do. Number one, we do need to expand domestic production. And that means, for example, telling the oil companies the 68 million acres that they currently have leased that they're not drilling, use them or lose them. And I think that we should look at offshore drilling and implement it in a way that allows us to get some additional oil. But understand, we only have 3 to 4% of the world's oil reserves, and we use 25% of the world's oil, which means that we can't drill our way out of the problem. And that's why I focused on putting resources into solar, wind, biodiesel, geothermal. These have been priorities of mine since I got to the Senate, and it is absolutely critical that we develop a high fuel-efficient car that's built not in Japan and not in South Korea, but built here in the United States of America. We invented the auto industry. And the fact that we have fallen so far behind is something that we have to work on. Now, I just want to make one last point, because Senator McCain mentioned NAFTA and the issue of trade, and that actually bears on this issue. I believe in free trade, but I also believe that for far too long, certainly during the course of the Bush administration, with the support of Senator McCain, the attitude's been that any trade agreement is a good trade agreement. And NAFTA did not have enforceable labor agreements and environmental agreements, and what I said was we should include those and make them enforceable. In the same way that we should enforce rules against China manipulating its currency to make our exports more expensive and their exports to us cheaper. And when it comes to South Korea, we've got a trade agreement up right now. They are sending hundreds of thousands of South Korean cars into the United States. That's all good. We can only get 4,000 to 5,000 into South Korea. That is not free trade. We've got to have a president who's going to be advocating on behalf of American businesses and American workers, and I make no apology for that.
Senator.
Well, you know, I admire so much Senator Obama's eloquence, and you really have to pay attention to words. He said, we will look at offshore drilling. Do you get that? Look at. We can offshore drill now. We've got to do it now. We will reduce the cost of a barrel of oil because we show the world that we have a supply of our own. It's doable. The technology is there, and we have to drill now. Now, on the subject of free trade agreements, I am a free trader, and we need to have education and training programs for displaced workers that work, going to our community colleges. But let me give you another example of free trade agreement that Senator Obama opposes. Right now, because of previous agreements, some made by President Clinton, the goods and products that we send to Colombia, which is our largest agricultural importer of our products, there's $1 billion that our businesses have paid so far in order to get our goods in there. Because of previous agreements, their goods and products come into our country for free. So Senator Obama, who has never traveled south of our border, opposes the Colombia Free Trade Agreement, the same country that's helping us try to stop the flow of drugs into our country that's killing young Americans. And also the country that just freed 3 Americans, that will help us create jobs in America because they will be a market for our goods and products without us having to pay the $1 billion and more that we've already paid. Free trade with Colombia is something that's a no-brainer. But maybe you ought to travel down there and visit them, and maybe you could understand it a lot better.
Let me respond. Actually, I understand it pretty well. The history in Colombia right now is that labor leaders have been targeted for assassination on a fairly consistent basis, and there have not been prosecutions. And what I have said, because the free trade, the trade agreement itself does have labor and environmental protections, but we have to stand for human rights, and we have to make sure that violence isn't being perpetrated against workers who are just trying to organize for their rights. Which is why, for example, I supported the Peruvian free trade agreement, which was a well-structured agreement. But I think that the important point is we've got to have a president who understands the benefits of free trade, but also is going to enforce unfair trade agreements and is going to stand up to other countries. And the last point I'll make, because we started on energy, when I talked about the automakers, they are obviously getting hammered right now. They were already having a tough time because of high gas prices, and now with the financial crisis, car dealerships are closing and people can't get car loans. That's why I think it's important for us to get loan guarantees to the automakers, but we do have to hold them responsible as well to start producing the highly fuel-efficient cars of the future. And Detroit had dragged its feet too long in terms of getting that done. It's going to be one of my highest priorities because transportation accounts for about 30% of our total energy consumption. If we can get that right, then we can move in a direction not only of energy independence, but we can create 5 million new jobs all across America, including in the heartland, where we can retool some of these plants to make these highly fuel-efficient cars, and also to make wind turbines and solar panels, the kinds of clean energy approaches that should be the driver of our economy for the next century.
Well, let me just say that this is, Senator Obama doesn't want a free trade agreement with our best ally in the region, but wants to sit down across the table without precondition with Hugo Chavez, the guy who has been helping FARC, the terrorist organization. Free trade between ourselves and Colombia. I just recited to you the benefits of concluding that agreement. $1 billion of American dollars that could have gone to creating jobs and businesses in the United States, opening up those markets. So I don't think there's any doubt that Senator Obama wants to restrict trade and he wants to raise taxes. And the last president of the United States that tried that was Herbert Hoover. And we went from a deep recession into a depression. We're not going to follow that path when I'm president of the United States.
All right, let's go to